For 1,000 years, this city refused to die, until one morning in 1453, the unthinkable happened. Once the capital of empires, a bridge between East and West, Constantinople had survived countless sieges, from Persians to Crusaders. But this time, the storm would not pass.
How could the mightiest walls in history that stopped crusaders and armies for centuries finally collapse?
The Theodosian walls, 3 layers thick, had made Constantinople nearly untouchable for 1,000 years.
But beyond those walls, a young sultan was preparing something the world had never seen before.
At just 21 years old, Sultan Mehmed II was determined to finish what his ancestors could not.
For him, Constantinople was not just a city, it was destiny.
And for Emperor Constantine XI, Palaiologos was the final stand of a dying empire.
As dawn broke over the Bosporus, the world was about to witness the final battle for an empire.
Before dawn on April 6, 1453, the ground outside Constantinople began to tremble.
Tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers lined the plains of Thrace, Janissaries, cavalry, and engineers. At their center stood a massive cannon unlike anything the world had ever seen, built by a Hungarian named Orban. The city had faced sieges before, but never this kind of firepower. Inside the walls, Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos prepared for the inevitable.
He gathered every man still able to hold a sword, Greeks, Venetians, and even a few mercenaries from Genoa.
The city's heart still beat with pride, but everyone knew this might be their final dawn. A Byzantine chronicle, the Chronicle of Pseudo-Sphrantzes, tells how people still believed a miracle had come, that angels would descend to protect the Queen of Cities.
But when the first thunder of Ottoman cannons echoed across the field, even faith began to tremble.
The siege of Constantinople had truly begun. As smoke drifted over the plains and the echoes of cannon fire shook the air, both sides realized this was no ordinary siege.
The age of stone walls was ending, and gunpowder was rewriting the rules of war.
The great cannon, built by Orban, was said to weigh over 18 tons and fire stone balls heavier than a horse.
Each shot could take hours to prepare, gunpowder packed, wicks lit, men shouting to clear the line.
When it fired, the ground itself seemed to roar. Byzantine soldiers called it the voice of the apocalypse. Inside the city, panic grew. The mighty Theodosian walls, which had stood for 1,000 years, began to crack.
Men patched the breaches at night using stones, wood, even furniture ripped from homes.
As one eyewitness wrote later, the walls bled like living flesh, but Sultan Mehmed II wasn't satisfied. He ordered smaller cannons placed in rows, surrounding the city like a metal storm. Every sunrise brought another barrage, and every sunset another prayer inside Hagia Sophia. And yet, behind the city's fear, something unexpected was happening, a desperate hope that refused to die. For weeks, the city endured constant fire. Day and night blurred together, smoke, rubble, and prayers. But inside those crumbling walls, faith became both a shield and a burden. Every night, Hagia Sophia filled with citizens, men, women, children, praying for deliverance. Old hymns echoed under its great dome, mixing with the distant rumble of cannons. According to oral stories passed through generations, some swore they saw light above the altar, a sign that angels still watched over the city.
But not everyone believed deliverance would come.
Emperor Constantine XI walked among his people in silence, not as a ruler, but as one of them. Some said they saw him weeping in armor, whispering prayers as the walls shook.
A modern historian, Stephen Runciman, later wrote that Constantine fought not only the Turks, but despair itself.
Yet even as faith and fear clashed within the walls, Sultan Mehmed had a plan to break more than stone. He would strike at the sea itself. While Constantinople prayed, the Ottoman camp buzzed with a different kind of faith in innovation.
Across the field, Sultan Mehmed II studied the map of the Golden Horn, the inner harbor that the Byzantines thought no one could breach.
For centuries, the harbor was protected by a colossal iron chain stretched from tower to tower across the mouth of the sea.
No ship had ever crossed it. Venetian and Genoese sailors inside the city boasted that the chain would hold forever.
But Mehmed had a vision that defied history itself. If ships couldn't sail through the Horn, then he would make them sail over land. Ottoman engineers laid greased logs across the hills of Galata, forming a wooden path over which the Sultan's fleet could be pulled.
On the morning of April 22, Constantinople awoke to an impossible sight. Dozens of Ottoman warships gliding downhill toward the Golden Horn on land.
By the time the defenders realized what had happened, Mehmed's navy was already behind the chain.
The sea, once the city's greatest ally, had turned against it. Now there was no safe side left.
The sea was no longer safe, and on land, the walls that once defied the world were beginning to crack.
Ottoman cannons thundered day and night. At the center stood the monster cannon, built by a Hungarian engineer named Urban, powerful enough to shake the earth itself. Each shot tore stones from the ancient Theodosian walls that had resisted Persians, Arabs, and Crusaders for 1,000 years.
Inside the city, desperate citizens rushed to fill the gaps with rubble, wood, and sandbags.
But the sound of cannon fire never stopped. It echoed like a heartbeat, counting down the city's final days.
The Venetian commander, Giovanni Giustiniani, tried to keep morale alive.
He led from the front lines, patching breaches, encouraging exhausted men.
But even the bravest could see what was coming. Beneath the rumble of artillery, the foundations of an empire were dying.
By late May, the once proud towers were cracked open like ancient bones.
The emperor himself took up arms and fought among his men, no longer as a ruler, but as a soldier of a doomed city.
The walls that had guarded the Christian East for 1,000 years were bleeding. And beyond them, Mehmed's army prepared for one final storm.
As the final week of May arrived, both sides knew the end was near. The city was broken, but not silent. From every church, the sound of bells echoed through the night, calling the faithful for one last prayer. Inside Hagia Sophia, Emperor Constantine XI stood among priests, nobles, and commoners alike.
He asked for forgiveness, not as an emperor, but as a man facing the end.
A witness from the Chronicle of Pseudo-Sphrantzes described the scene as the last communion of a dying world.
After the prayers ended, he rode to the walls one final time. The night sky burned red with cannon fire.
Giustiniani was still there, wounded, pale, but refusing to leave his post.
At dawn, May 29, 1453, the final assault began.
3 waves of Ottoman soldiers stormed the walls, first the irregulars, then the Anatolian Corps, and finally the elite Janissaries.
Drums thundered, and the sound of thousands of voices cried Allahu Akbar across the plains.
Inside the city, Constantine and his men fought hand to hand.
They held for hours until Giustiniani was finally struck by a cannon fragment and carried away.
When the men saw their commander fall, panic spread like fire.
Still, Constantine refused to flee. He broke his imperial seal and cried, "The city is lost, but I live and die as a Roman."
He vanished into chaos, fighting among his soldiers. No one ever saw him again.
And just like that, the Roman Empire, the empire of Constantine the Great, of Justinian, of 1,000 years, ended in a single morning.
The walls were silent. By sunrise, the banner of the crescent moon flew above Constantinople.
The unthinkable had happened. After more than 1,000 years, the last Roman city had fallen.
For 3 days, chaos ruled. Soldiers looted homes, churches, and palaces.
Women and children were taken as captives while flames devoured entire districts.
According to oral accounts, even the air smelt of smoke and tears. In the afternoon, Sultan Mehmed II entered the city on horseback. He was only 21, yet now the master of two worlds. He ordered his troops to stop the looting and rode straight to Hagia Sophia.
When he entered, the once great cathedral was filled with silence and broken icons.
There, Mehmed dismounted and touched the ground in prayer. He who conquers a city must conquer himself first. A later chronicler quoted him saying,
He declared the great church would become a mosque, but he spared its structure and its beauty.
To many in the West, it was the darkest day since the fall of Rome.
But to Mehmed, it was the dawn of something new. Istanbul, the capital of an empire that would stretch across continents. As one world died, another was born. The fall of Constantinople didn't just end an empire, it reshaped the world. And its echoes still reach us today.
The city had fallen, but its story had just begun. Across Europe, church bells tolled in mourning. No one could believe the Queen of Cities was gone.
But from its ashes, something unexpected happened. Greek scholars fled west, carrying books, manuscripts, and knowledge once lost to time.
Those ideas, preserved for centuries in Byzantine libraries, helped ignite what we now call the Renaissance.
Meanwhile, Mehmed transformed his conquest into vision.
He rebuilt the broken city, welcomed traders, and made it the beating heart of his empire. He named it Istanbul, the city of Islam, but also a crossroads of worlds.
A historian, Roger Crowley, once said, "The fall of Constantinople didn't just close the Middle Ages, it opened the modern world."
And that's what makes this story timeless, not the fall itself, but what rose from it. Even today, the echoes of that morning in 1453 still shape our world in art, faith, and identity. For some, it marks the end of Rome. For others, it marks the rise of a new civilization. Empires rise, empires fall, but stories like this remind us that even when walls crumble, the legacy remains.